Let's talk about some sell high players. Dynasty right now. Who do you have as a player that we are looking to sell right now?
We weren't sure what his role was going to be coming into this season. He did play a little bit last year, surprised the hell out of a lot of people. He's probably either a super late round pick or picked up off the waiver wires, depending on your league. Played for a resurgent team, basically dominated the lion's share of the carries for this particular squad. They did bring in other guys, but that didn't matter when this guy was on the field. That is the Los Angeles Rams running back, number 23, KYREN Williams. But the reason why I do say KYREN Williams, he is still incredibly young. I believe he's only 23 years old. We see this with running backs all the time, where a running back will come out of nowhere, have just an absolute monster of a season. That team either goes out and drafts a running back or they bring somebody in and we're like, what the fuck? James Robinson from the Jaguars is the absolute perfect comp to this guy. And I've seen it enough where I'm not going to get fooled by that anymore. There is a precedent for this sort of thing to happen. So he was a running back with heavy usage. By heavy usage, I mean games with 20 plus carries. He had 7 of those. He only played 12 games, guys. That is heavy, heavy usage. And if you look at his last 5 games, 21 carries, 25 carries, 27 carries, 22 carries, 20 carries. Also, he missed a month in the middle of the season. So keep that in mind as well. Obviously, he was drafted in the 5th round. So there's not a ton of draft capital invested in this guy, right? He's not Saquon Barkley. He's not Bijan Robinson. He's not Breece Hall. He's not any of these kind of highly touted running backs. We've seen guys that have these bust out seasons that are 4th and 5th round picks. And then the team goes out there and gets another running back. And can he repeat 15 total touchdowns? We always, especially in fantasy, we talk about a regression to the mean. I think this kind of feels like that similar situation. So KYREN Williams had a fantastic season, kind of a reason why that the Rams bounced back and were able to make the playoffs. We didn't think they were going to be very good this year. But for me, he is an absolute sell high. And the fact that he's only 23 years old, you're probably going to get good value for him from somebody that's looking out there to go buy a running back.
If you're looking at keep trade cut, he's RB5 right now in the dynasty community. He got a shit ton of work, right? He was the workhorse guy. The only thing with him is he's got 2 more years left. He's got 24 and 25. But we do see this kind of thing all the time, right? You brought up J-Rob, right? Alfred Morris, Philip Lindsay, right? Sometimes these guys have great seasons and they get used and then they're just not used anymore or they just don't get re-signed, and then or situations change, right? KYREN Williams, I mean, awesome situation this year. There's no competition in the backfield, right? They got rid of Cam Akers' bum ass.
Mm.
And now going into next season, he's pretty much the only guy in a draft class that doesn't have many great running backs that's coming out. So he's still going to probably look good for next year as well. So he's a guy that's being valued as a top 5 dynasty running back. If he's going to be valued in the top 5 and you can get top 5 prices for him, I mean, just think of what you can come off of him for and get yourself a wide receiver that can last you years or way more years to get a top 10 wide receiver for KYREN Williams. I'm currently going to be trying to do that.
That's insane value.
It's an insane opportunity to try and sell high. Yes, he is very young, so people believe in him. People think that he's going to be the future, and he could very well be. But I don't want to make that bet. If I have something that valuable, I need to turn that into something that's going to be valuable for my team for a long period of time. At least that's how I look at it. I want to sell this player high, right? I'll buy into some kind of running backs next year if I need to, but for right now, I want to capitalize on what that guy's value is because RB5, not that he doesn't deserve to be there, right? He had an insane season this year, but they're going to run him into the ground like McVay loves to do. I mean, it's only a matter of time. And then once he gets injured, that's it. All the value is gone. It's plummeted. You can't come off of him. Definitely a tough situation. But what else could happen, right? What else bad could happen next year that maybe shit doesn't pan out for KYREN Williams, right? I
The
mean,
Rams are terrible.
Stafford's always banged up, right? What if the Rams are terrible, like we thought they were going to be this year? I mean, things could happen. We see it every season. What if
Yeah.
Stafford goes out there and pulls an Aaron Rodgers next year? First game, fucking boom, tears the shit. Like, what do we do at that point?
Also, with KYREN Williams, it's just so like even if he has another good, nobody's paying a running back. Like it's just such a fickle thing We talk about this week in, week out, show in, show out. Josh Jacobs went through it. Jonathan Taylor went through it, although he did get re-signed, but that was clearly an outlier. Saquon Barkley's going through it. Austin Eckler's having issues, right? So the running back situation, you have to capitalize as quickly as possible because, as you said, all it takes is one injury, one major injury. That's all it takes for that first round value to plummet to basically nothing.
He is an outlier, right? He's a smaller running back. He's not meant to carry a
Five
workhorse
nine,
load,
five
and you're
nine, one
giving
ninety
him the
four.
workhorse load, and he didn't
He
survive the
missed a
whole
month.
season.
He missed
He
a
missed the
month.
whole month, right? He didn't survive the season at that. So, listen, when you're trying to win, I mean, you run him into the ground. I mean, I don't blame fucking Sean McVay. It is what it is. That's the landscape. That's what you got to do.
And if
But
you watch the Rams Lions game, he didn't finish that game either.
so yeah, I'd definitely be looking to move KYREN for, some kind of top 12-ish wide receiver. Sending KYREN in love for Mahomes. There you go. And it's not that I don't like KYREN as the player. Like he can go out next year and do the same exact thing he did this year. Maybe he does a little bit
Mhm.
better if he's able to stay healthy the whole season. But all the stars have to align. A lot of things have to go right for him to keep this value right next season or the year after, right? And for me,
Yep.
I'm just not willing to take the chance on that. Even if I'm in position to win right now, I'm still trying to move off of him. It doesn't even matter, right? I just won the ship in one league. I'm still moving off of him. I already have 3 top 12 wide receivers. I'm gonna go get another one.
'Cause you
I'm
gotta
gonna go get
capitalize
another
on
one.
that value.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I'll find another running back that I can play. Now, in shallower leagues, running back's obviously a little bit more important when you're playing, some I see some of these like start 7s, start 8s, but when you're playing in Superflex, start 10, which is kind of the standard nowadays, start 11, start 12 even now, you wanna stack up on the wide receivers. You don't wanna get stuck holding value on this running backs and lose out or miss out. A perfect example is Javonte Williams a few years ago, valued as a top 5 running back,
Mhm.
and then what did Javonte do? He goes out and fucking blows out his knee, right? Never the same. He went from, a top 5 RB to RB 16 right now. As these guys get hurt, like you see it, they just lose way too much value. I don't wanna bank on the future or bank for the best case scenario all the time. Sometimes you have to take the reality of it or what can happen in the short term and the long term, and then kind of make a decision on what you want to do. What top 10 wide receiver do you think someone could realistically get for KYREN Diggs someone better? Now you could
I wouldn't go for Diggs. I'd go and he put another comment in there, Waddle or Olave. That's where you wanna go.
Olave is perfect. If you could try and get Garrett Wilson, I mean, you might have to give up a little bit more on top of KYREN, but the thing is, KYREN gets you at least in the conversation.
Mhm.
That's the thing is KYREN gets you in the conversation for one of those top guys. Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins. You could literally try and get anybody that you want
I would
outside
agree,
of like top 5.
and
I
it's
would
not
say if
gonna
you want,
take much, like, if you add a second
no.
on top of it or, something like that, a late first, then you could really get yourself a seat at a top 8 type wide receiver. That's where the value really comes in is because now, like, as you said, the most important thing is getting the conversation open. Once the
Mhm.
conversation's open and the guy's like, "All right, I'll do KYREN in a second for Olave." Boom, done.
Or you could even go down lower. Maybe you wanna pick up more assets on top of it, right? Depending on your situation or what your team structure is, right? Do you go down even lower and start picking up picks on, a first on top of it, a second on top of it? Do you go down to, like, the Tank Dell, Zay
Mm,
Flowers, Michael Pittman range, DK Metcalf? Do you try and get first on top of that? Do you try and get multiple guys, right? All depends on kinda your situation, but those would be guys I'd be okay tearing down to if I'm getting something good on top of it.
yeah, especially depending on what situation you're in, right? Like you said, I mean, I know you said it doesn't matter what situation you're in, but the situation does matter in a sense where would I need to split KYREN into multiple assets, or do I package something with KYREN to go up and get myself that top tier wide receiver, maybe a super flex quarterback if that's your situation,
Mhm. In that case, it matters. I meant no matter my situation, if I'm competing or rebuilding or
or
whatever my
tanking? Yeah,
situation
yeah.
is in that sense, I'm moving him. I have
Mm-hmm.
the chance to move him as a top 5 guy, I'm moving him. Pittman plus for KYREN, which brings me to my next sell high, which is a guy that's right behind him, which is gonna be Devon Achane.
Ooh,
Same kind of thing.
nice.
I'm selling him high. He's being valued as a top 10 running back, top 5 in some people's eyes. Mostert is an older guy. right? He should still be there next year. There's obviously a possibility he's not, but for me, I don't see a scenario or a world other than a bunch of injuries happening where ACHANE gets given the reins and the workhorse load to become like that KYREN. I don't see that ever happening. I think he's always gonna have a role, and he's always gonna be a good running back, but the landscape of the running back position right now automatically just vaults him into the top 10, top 8, top 5, wherever you wanna put him. I mean, he deserves to be, decently high up there. I can't put him over a guy like JT, or even McCaffrey, or even KYREN for that point right now, but yeah, Achane is a guy that I definitely wanna come off of because I don't know what is gonna happen. I do know that they're not gonna give him the reins. He's a smaller guy. We've seen when once he starts getting work, he's got
Mhm.
already injury concerns, which was the
Yep.
concern of him coming out of college. That was the thing with Achane, kinda like Kyron, he's a smaller running back. He can't take on
Kinda the same
that
mold as
workload.
Kyren.
Can't take on that workload. He's always going to be the second guy. He's always going to be a part of a committee. He's never going to be the guy that gets 20 plus carries a game. That's just, it's not happening, especially in that offense, the way that they like to do things. So I don't see that happening. I think same kind of situation as Kyron. The value is way too high at the running back position, and I want to move off. I don't mind Devin Achan. I don't not like him as a player. He's a great player in a great system. He's going to have great games. He's going to have amazing games that are going to win you weeks. I'm not denying that at all. But what I want to do is take that value and transfer it while I can to another position, whether that's wide receiver, whether that's quarterback. I had here, Achane in a second for Olave, Achane in a third for Olave. Depending how people feel, you should be able to pull that off, right? Olave didn't have a killer season, but he had a very good season. He was what,
Mhm.
top 20, I believe. He's still valued pretty high, but people are not as excited as they once were. Jalen Waddle, maybe, right? Straight up, Nico
Mhm.
Collins. If you can get any of these guys, I'm okay with coming off of. I'm trying to come off of HN, trying to just transfer the value. Same kind of situation as we talked about with Kyron. So
Yeah, the Achan thing is incredibly interesting because there are people who are going to go out there, see the insane numbers that he could put up on a per game basis, and go, yeah, I want some of that in that Miami offense that we know is going to be really good next year, regardless of what we saw in the playoffs and freezing Kansas City. And he's incredibly young, right? He was a rookie. So I think that boosts his value even more where he's still what 22 years old, I believe. But the scary thing for me was that the dude just is not going to be able to stay on the field for you consistently enough for you to be able to capitalize on that production. And if he's not in your lineups, he's not doing squat for you. So you might as well package him with some and upgrade your roster.
he's one of those boom bust guys. Like you have to play him. Give me him as my RB2. Give me him as my flex guy that I can throw in there. Like I'm not relying on him as my RB1. And he lost you the playoffs. Week 15, 9 points, week 16, 4 points. I mean, if you played him in the ship, if you made it that far with him shit in the bed the last 2 weeks, then obviously that turned out well, but take advantage of the value, come off Olave, Waddle, Nico Collins. Those are some of the guys I'd be trying to look at.
Yeah, and it'll be relatively easy to get the conversation started with a guy like Achan because he is explosive. We've seen what he can do, and the fact that he can win you weeks. I think that the fact that he is such a valuable asset, maybe overvalued asset, get you to the table, right? That's what you're looking
Mhm.
for. Get to the table, open up the conversations, and people will probably make some of these deals. Now, the smarter GMs will be like, hold on a minute, this is a running back that gets hurt all the time, but it'll get you in the conversation. If you add the sweeteners that we talked about, seconds, thirds, you should be able to really cash in on that value.
Yeah, says out here in these leagues, there's way too many managers that come across that value RB over even QBs in Superflex Dynasty. Yeah, listen, you take advantage of how people think because there's a bunch of people out there that love these running backs, like love running backs. So if you can take advantage and get yourself a quarterback in Superflex, I mean, I think right now he's in the DAC range.
It's kind of that redraft mentality that we talked about, where you could be good for a year or two, and it could pay dividends next year if you go out and buy Kyron Williams and he balls out again and has another top 5-7 season. he could be a part of the reason why you go to a championship. But we're thinking long term. We're thinking 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And I don't think in 3 to 5 years we'll be having a conversation about how valuable Kyren Williams is.
I mean, and not even that. We're talking strategy. We're talking take advantage of the market. Like this is, strategy based. We're not against Kyren Williams. I don't think that he's not going to have a great season next season. Like he can. But looking at everything when we're talking about dynasty, we want to take advantage of value so that we can make our team better for the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go buy a top 10, top 12 wide receiver.
Yeah, I also think that, and we mentioned this in some of our other videos, is that having these running backs is like driving a car off the lot. The second you get them, the value's depreciated. Like that's
Mhm.
the bottom line. So you're never actually gonna get what you gave up if you decide to come off of these running backs if you buy them.
Who do you have for us as another sell high player?
This is a little bit of an interesting situation for a number of reasons, and I'll touch on those shortly. This guy had a probably was the best steal of the draft, meaning you got him incredibly late and he finished as RB2 this season. Plays on the same team as your boy Devon ACHANE. That is one Raheem Mostert. Now, you might not get as much for him as a Devon Achane because he's going into his age 32 season. But the reason why I'm saying sell high is because coming off of what he did, and you probably should have traded him already before the season ended. Considering where you got him, anything you get back is going to be good value, right? Can you add something to Mostert to go get you a wide receiver? So I'm looking at it from, am I getting back more than I invested in my either startup draft or wherever I got Raheem Mostert? And there's no way he's getting 21 touchdowns. There's just no way.
Uh,
There is no
so
fucking
if
way.
I can get a second, I'll take a second for him. I
Which
don't think
is
there's no world where you're getting more than that. So if you can get a second at this at his age with the production that he put up and just someone will give you a second for him, then yeah, but that even might be hard to get.
I would agree, but the
Or
thing
can
for
you
me
throw him
is
in a trade? Can you throw him in a
that's
trade to
where I was gonna go.
sweeten the pot so that you can get the player, Mostert plus some kind of package deal?
And that's where I was kind of leaning to because if Mostert or something plus Mostert, right, can get you to that next level. There are people out there. Remember Jamal Williams last year when he had 20 something touchdowns for the Detroit
Mhm.
Lions, right? There were people going out there and getting Jamal Williams in trades, like, and they were acquiring something for him. And I think the time is to acquire something for him before you get absolutely zero
Mhm.
going forward, and that goes into the draft. Like I said, you probably should have traded him already, and I did say it was tricky because he is older, and I think a lot of people around the league are like, yeah, that's probably his swan song type of season.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if you could get a second. I mean, I think there are people out there in some leagues that you might be able to do it, but for the most part, like, I'm not giving up even I'm probably not even giving up a third for Mostert. I'm not buying Mostert. I'm gonna wait till the season. I'll buy him then, like if he survives the off season, but I'm not gonna buy him now. So yeah, he is a perfect guy to just kind of sell, but he probably works best in a package deal because, like I said, you might not get a second, you might not even get a third, but if he's in a package kind of deal, he gives you that little bit of, that little bit of extra to kind of get the actual guy that you're really trying to get. So I think a package deal might work best with Mostert.
I agree, and my main thing is just getting something for him because I don't want this is not a guy you want dying on your team and you get nothing out of his
Hmm.
perceived value. Even if it is like you said as a sweetener, fuck that. I'm gonna take advantage of that being able to be thrown in there and get something positive.
My next sell high player is going to be because I don't think he's ever going to get higher than what he is right now. He's got 2024 and 2025 is going to be a free agent. Okay.
Okay.
This guy right now on Keep Trade Cut, which again, I don't think he's going to go any higher than what he is now. He's wide receiver 10, which is
Mm,
Brandon Ayuk of the 49ers. Okay.
ooh, I thought you were going somewhere else. Okay.
Well, I love Brandon Ayuk as a player. He was a guy that I was high on. I mean, even last year before he kind of broke out. So he was a guy that I did like. But now we're talking about wide receiver 10. on, a team that does spread the ball around. It could be a little inconsistent. He did go crazy, this year. 1,342 yards, 7 tutties on 75 catches, only 105 targets. 105 targets. Now that's some crazy efficiency, and he would finish as wide receiver 14. Like, I feel
Mhm.
like I don't know how much higher he can go in that offense with all those different weapons, right? How much
Yep.
better can he actually finish? So,
I like it.
for me, wide receiver 15 finished last year, wide receiver 14 finished this year. I don't know how much higher that's going to get. So if I can take advantage while he's a top 10 dynasty wide receiver right now, I'm going to move off him. I mean, if you just look at who you'd rather have, maybe if I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk here, Chris Olave,
Yep.
Tyreek Hill.
That's close. That's interesting. I think I'd take Hill just because he has that way. He's a game breaker. So I
All
think I'd
right.
rather have Hill.
How about Tua? Dak, right? Those are quarterbacks, obviously. Would you still take the quarterback there, or are you taking Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah, I mean, it's a quarterback, man.
Taking the quarterback, right? How about Nico Collins is wide receiver 11 right now? Would you rather have Nico than Ayuk?
Playing with CJ Stroud, I think so.
Yes, of course. Yeah, hell yeah, I'd rather have Nico. 1297 for 8 tutties, and he played 15 games.
And you got to think CJ Stroud is going to take another step next year. So that could be 1,500 and 10 touchdowns.
About Jalen Waddle. Would you rather have Waddle or Ayuk?
I'd rather have Waddle, but I think it starts to get interesting there.
Devonta Smith.
That's
Now I'm going
interesting
down.
too.
Devonta Smith, DJ Moore. I mean, those are conversations, right? But if Ayuk is going to be, valued higher, can I get a second on top of one of those guys? Can I get Devonta Smith in a second, DJ Moore maybe in a second, Addison, Pittman, Tank Dell, Drake London, JSN, EK? I mean, could I get a first?
The thing with that San Francisco offense is, as you said, they're all capped virtually except for Christian McCaffrey. Like, that's the only guy because of there's so many guys there. This does feel like a ceiling type. Like, that's the ceiling, right? 14, right on the fringe, the high end wide receiver too.
If you need to pick up assets or if you need to go after a quarterback, right? Can you use Brandon Ayuk to go get in that range was what? Dak Prescott, Tua, Purdy, right? Do I need to go get a QB? So if he's getting you in the QB conversation, I mean, that's just a little too much for me. Let me move off. Let me pick up some value somewhere else so I don't lose that value. Because we see it all the time. We see all of these guys fluctuate, right? It all has to do with, their quarterback situation, whether they're producing right now. I mean, we've seen
Hmm.
Tank Dell be as high as like wide receiver 10. Now he's like 18.
That was
We've
mainly
seen
because of
DJ
injury.
Moore. We've seen DJ Moore fluctuate up and down from the 10 to 25 range. Nico Collins. And this is all like recent. Michael Pittman, Drake London, JSN, DK. T. Higgins at wide receiver 23. I mean, there's some good wide receivers all the way down here. And there's not crazy much difference between them and the wide receivers at 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, can I move off of Ayuk if he's being valued as a top 10 wide receiver? If I can get that kind of price, move off to a QB, down tier on wide receiver, pick up some picks if you need to. Or can you tier up? Like, you might not have to give up much to go from Ayuk to Olave.
I feel like
Can
that's
I
the
get,
route I would go.
right? Can I get into the Garrett Wilson range? I want to say Puka, I want to say St. Brown, but those guys have just been insane, and they're getting into a tier where it's going to be very, very hard to get. Or bonus one, you want to say?
That is Tyreek Hill. And the interesting thing with Tyreek Hill is he's going into his age 30 season, which it doesn't even feel real because I feel like he was just 24 years old catching bombs from Patrick Mahomes. But he's still a true wide receiver one, which means he can get you great, great value in return, right? Like, can you tier down? And also, too, remember, and I think we all kind of forgot about this, like Tyreek Hill said he was only going to play out the rest of this contract with Miami. And after this, now that the season's over, that means 2 more seasons. I don't know if that's still a thing, but I think people still tend to forget about that. And then, bro, his usage the last 2 seasons has been absolutely insane. Over the last 2 seasons, he has 340 targets, 238 catches, and 3,500 yards in the last 2 seasons. So his usage has been crazy, and he's been getting banged up a little bit, right? Towards the end, he was banged up a little bit at the end of the season, and there's been a little bit of those injury concerns with him. not crazy, but it starts to creep up. And as you said, especially for wide receivers, once they hit that age 30 season, things start breaking down when they normally didn't. So Tyreek Hill, and the reason why I say that is because he could net you a big haul and he could kind of help you reload your team as opposed to letting him die on your team.
Like I said, any of these guys from like wide receiver 10 down to like, even 24, 25, 26, like they're all relatively very, very similar as far as, the points to production that's going to come. So can you take advantage in your particular league and move up and down in the tiers, pick up
Hmm.
assets if you need to, like take advantage of, those times and those pockets in the market like we always talk about. Another little bonus one that I kind of wanted to talk about, and I know you're not going to like it because he's your boy, but one
Jordan
kind of
Love.
bonus one, which is more of a kind of a tier down, but Sam Laporta,
Mm.
the tight end one right now in Dynasty, right? Can I move off to one of these injured guys like an Andrews or a Hawkinson and pick up a pick or an asset on top of that?
But yeah, I understand the logic behind it. I'm not opposed to it. It would have to
Well,
be something that really does kind of blow me away because I think Sam Laporta is kind of going to be the. I don't want to say he's going to be the next Kelsey, but he has an opportunity to kind of dominate that tight end position for a long time. And I think if you have him, you kind of don't. It's kind of like Kelsey, where you don't have to worry about it.
well, let me put it this way, right? Hawkinson and Andrews obviously injured, but they were pretty much the 1, 2, 3, right? The top tight end guys, right? Sam Laporta
Hmm.
finished this season 86 catches, 889 yards, 10 tutties, right, on
He's a beast.
120 targets. Is that a ceiling, or are we going to see a possible Kelsey type? I mean, I don't know if that's possible with Amon-Ra there, but give or take 235 fantasy points for Sam Laporta
Hmm.
compared to, right, Hawkinson, who was injured, missed games, right, 221, right? Evan Ingram, 234, right? I mean, Joku was 205. Obviously, Andrews was hurt. So, my thing is if you're going to get relatively the same production, and it's not going to be much of a difference, right? Because Hawkinson averaged more points per game than Sam Laporta. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about not even a point difference where, that I can pick up an asset on top of second round pick or some kind of player and move off of Laporta to get the tight end 2 or tight end 3 in Hawkinson or Andrews, right? And I get the other point too, saying, all right, if I have Sam Laporta, I never have to worry again. I can just kind of keep him and hold him. But what if I can just have something else in my pocket that's going to give me the same exact thing? Yeah, I don't think you're going to lose the championship or win the championship if you have, Sam Laporta compared to Hawkinson or, a Mark Andrews. Like, I don't
No,
think
that
that's gonna win or lose you the ship. So in that sense, like, give me the extra asset that I can get on top of it, whatever that may be, so that
no,
I
that's
can use.
fair.
Or what if I get a second on top and I can use that to buy fucking Mike Evans?
Does Sam Laporta have a ceiling in his rookie season like that? Do you think he can get better
I think as a player, yeah, but when we're talking about the production,
production?
with a guy like Amon-Ra on that team, like, I mean, listen, 120 targets, 86 catches, 889 yards, like 10 tutties. Shit, how much better can he actually do? I mean, I think that could be what he does. That could be his normal. I mean, but it's not, I don't know if it's gonna be that Travis Kelce fucking 1,300 yard double digit tutty seasons. I don't think it's gonna be that crazy.
I would have to really like the package I was getting, like if you said, and even with Hawkinson, like I know, especially with the quarterback, the questions at quarterback going into the next season with the Vikings, like that doesn't make me feel 100% secure. I know Hawkinson's really good regardless, but
I do think Kirk winds up coming back on the cheaper deal, but that was more of a sell high to still replace with a high player, but just pick up
mhm.
an
That's
asset
kind of
on
where I
top of it.
was.
So
That's kind of the same mold I had with like Tyreek Hill. Like, yeah, this guy's wide receiver one, but you can if you can get multiple assets or kind of reload.
yeah, so if you're telling me I can get Hawkinson or Andrews in a second on top of that and turn that into a Mike Evans or a fucking Stephon Diggs, I mean, now we're rolling, right? This is, it's not just one trade. Like we're trying to put something together to,
Mhm.
to kind of put up a run. So, it's just something that I'm saying that I would definitely try and explore. I'd be okay with, and I know that a lot of people won't be, and that's absolutely fine. But it's just kind of an
It's
idea where you can
interesting.
possibly pick up an asset. And you guys let me know out there. Would you do something like that? Is that something that you'd try and do? To pick up that extra asset to give you that kinda that leverage or that extra piece that you can use, or a Kincaid. I'm okay with the Kincaid too. If you wanna tear down to a Kincaid and pick up even more, can I get a fucking first on top of Kincaid?
You make
I
that
don't know where
argument.
people are gonna have him. Can I get Kyle Pitts in a first? Like, now we're really talking about strategy, and, of course, guys, it's going to depend on your format, right? How many teams is it? Is it super flex or not? How many starters? Like, all that stuff is gonna matter in these kind of moves that you wanna make, because there's certain formats in situations where you're just not gonna move off of Laporta for nothing. 1 QB league will be different, right? Any kind of shallower league would be different. A 10-team league could be different as well, where, that second just that just doesn't do me much. I can't buy Mike Evans for the second in this particular league. You know what I mean? All that stuff obviously would come into consideration as well.